Karja, Lili Savage, CW Openreach National Team.
Hi, I'm Fiona Curtis and I'm a National Officer for the CW with responsibility for Openreach. We want to try and start podcasts for across Openreach, and we want to make sure that our members are involved and understand what's going on and what's happening across Openreach.
Absolutely.
So today we want to try and discuss about the Lone Worker app, because we know the trial for the Lone Worker app has recently gone out, and we want to hear especially from Lili Savage from the Openreach National Team, her thoughts and opinions on the Lone Worker app and how it's going so far. So Lili, I just want to say, I suppose, on the Lone Worker app, what are the key features within the Lone Worker app?
I think what makes this app incredibly interesting and incredibly useful for members is that it is an enhanced duty of care. Too often are we in meetings with people where something horrible has happened, or have we heard in the news there's been an awful thing that's happened to a lone worker or to someone who hasn't maybe had this fallback. So I do see the merit in something that can help with if you're stuck or you feel scared or you're in a threatening situation, or you may have an illness like diabetes, you could have something else which requires urgent care immediately. I think it's incredibly important for our members to have something that acts as an extra kind of fallback for them to ensure their safety and ensure their well-being. I think as a trade union, it would be incredibly silly of us not to review something and really get under the skin of something that could actually be the difference between saving a life and you know, the next part doesn't even bear thinking about really, but it's something we have to consider.
Yeah. No, thank you, Lili. And especially around, that's where I think we will get into some of the, why we've got some of the, I suppose, measures in place of the protections that we have for our members in the trial of the Lone Worker app. And I know that the company were looking for around about 1,200 people and the volunteers to sign up for it across our between our team members and the management population, but especially because we represent the team member population, it's around then we had to get those the measures in place and around it being voluntary and people to sign up for it voluntary rather than actually being made to have this app on their phone. So why is it really important for us to make sure that the trial of the app was voluntary?
Yeah, I think as a trade union, we value autonomy over everything. And with any new initiative, we need to understand exactly what the mechanics are behind it, how it actually operates in the real world. I think it's all well and good advertising something, saying it's absolutely amazing, it can do this, it can get to emergency services in less time it takes to dial 999. Like, that sounds amazing, but how does that actually work in practice? And I think especially with so many initiatives the company have maybe thought about rolling out, already have, the axe forgets what the tree remembers. So the members will always be very wary of new initiatives, especially ones that could maybe pinpoint where they are at certain times, or look at their location, or that they have to sign on and sign off of. Anything that requires more labour, we as a trade union need to work out, does that actually integrate with a person's working day? Does it actually work for them? Is it good? And I think with anything, we need to trial it, see exactly what it is, and have members say, okay, actually, I see the merit in this. I've been in a situation where this could have really helped me. I can, fall detection, things like that, all of these things that this does, how does that actually apply to someone's real working day? I think they should have the opportunity always to be the ones to decide that for themselves.
I know, Lili, you mentioned about the phone in the 999 and you mentioned there about the fall detection.
Yeah.
So what is it specifically about this app? Like, what does this app actually give our members for that enhanced duty of care?
Yeah, so in terms of the fall detection, so if they're up poles, if they accidentally hurt themselves, if they're up loft ladders, if they're climbing customers' premises, things like that, if it falls, then it should automatically send an alert to the ARC, which is a small call centre that is emergency based. So they'll get that notification straight away from the phone, and then they'll deal with that accordingly and straight away. Things like remote working, like if you're away, from somewhere like emergency services, it'll send something straight away and get someone out to you straight away, which is incredibly important as well, because it means like members on the phone being like, I'm here and I'm there. If you just had a customer premises, you might not, in an emergency situation, remember the address. Do you know what I mean? There's so many factors to that I think would go through someone's head when they're in that kind of situation. So it does that. And as well as that, as I say, if you do have like health conditions that you have to think about ahead of time, that you are constantly on your mind, to have that peace of mind that something else is going to be monitoring that for you, I think is incredibly important. But again, with these things, we have to just see how they work in practice. Like, do they do all of these wonderful things? And it is the members' decision and their feedback that we need to take into consideration at the most important.
So like you mentioned also then about the location and about having about the access to location.
Yes.
So I think it's really, really important that about what do our managers have access to on locations, because I know that is a massive concern from our members, and also our branches have raised that concern on behalf of our members as well.
Valid concern, one that we had as an NT, obviously, whenever we're doing our discussions with the business. Any type of overt sort of intrusive surveillance, particularly with location, is something that we're vehemently against. And it's ingrained within this whole ethos of making people safe, but for like actually like valid reasons, as opposed to surveillance reasons, right? Which I can see why there would be
like constantly
suspicion.
monitoring where people are. And
right,
what
exactly.
Yes.
Managers can't do that. So the level of access they have is if you raise an emergency. So if a legitimate emergency happens and you're, say I'm outside this building, that's the only location they can see at that point of escalation, as opposed to being able to track you the entire working day. As soon as you sign on, they can't access that data to see, okay, where was Lily? At 3:00, they can't do that, right? So I think that's incredibly important for people to know that they cannot access data, they can't retrieve it and monitor and follow you. There's none of that. There's none of that.
I think the location piece, it is important because especially, you said about diabetes earlier on, Lily, and I'm type 1 diabetic myself, and I know that like an hour, 2 hours actually makes a huge difference, because if something was to happen to me, if I was to get a hypo and I was out literally in the middle of the countryside and somebody being able to get my location within an hour's time to actually come and check on me because I've said that I'm in a vulnerable area or I haven't reported back, then it allows actually somebody to check on me to say, actually, am I okay or am I just busy getting on with the job? Whereas if they were to wait 3-4 hours, that is a matter of life and death.
Absolutely.
So it is about getting that balance and actually understanding then, right, does this make a difference? Does it make, if somebody has a disability, if somebody does feel as though they're vulnerable, if you've got like even females, even for example ourselves, like if you're working in places that you feel as though you actually need that extra level of support, does this app do that for you?
Absolutely.
But it's making sure that that location piece and the precautions that we've got that in place for you, for the members.
Absolutely.
And I think then that is where I was going to come on to as well about the data, because it's so important as well about data. How long data is kept for, where data is stored, and about us. We had that conversation with the company. And I just want to say, Lily, like, so can you kind of elaborate on, like, so what did we discuss with the company then on data?
So the company's policy is they retain data for 3 years. Also, everything is in line with the UK's policy. But they will delete all of the data they have if the trial isn't implemented. And I think your point to us seeing sense in initiatives that actually determine the difference between life and death. So the business have, put forward many different safety initiatives that we've looked at, seen sense in, not seeing sense in, a number of them. But I think as a trade union, we can genuinely see the sense in something that actually will be able to step in and make the difference between life and death. And I think that's the major. And I guess the word isn't buy-in, because we've yet to see whether or not this will actually be good enough for these members and actually will do something for them. But it's in those moments where you are working and you don't have someone with you, and imagining being a lone engineer and being in a situation just like you've imagined. Thank you for being so candid and generous with that, because that is, like, I'm sure very, very typical of the experience of women in engineering and other genders as well. But if we can see the difference that it can make in terms of saving someone or intervening, because let's be honest, there's labour laws because of trade unions. Do you know what I mean? We can see the merit in these things. The majority, over half of the people that were put forward signed up to it. So if that many members see the merit in it, then if even one signed up, then I think we have to take it seriously. And
this is where I know you talked about like the implementation and like if we see this trial actually being a success, and I suppose then even for our members then, like, what are we doing? So what are we doing now in that interim piece? So during this trial, like, are we engaging with the company? Are we engaging with members? What about our health and safety reps? So what are we actually doing as a national team then to get the most feedback from our members?
Absolutely. I think the best thing that we are doing, I think the only thing that we can do is liaise with our branches and our regional coordinators who get all of that information and give it to us. But we need to, I've spoken to people individually. I know that my regional coordinators have spoken to people individually who have tested the fall detection and the things like that. But it's also hearing back what it does that aren't maybe necessarily parts that should be there. So the sign-in, sign-off process isn't really accessible for neurodivergent members. The original sort of duty of care process of signing in and signing off is much more seamless in their day as opposed to this app. So there are parts of it that aren't quite accessible, right, for our members who are neurodivergent. But it also has different elements of it that people aren't particularly happy with. It doesn't function the best all of the time. It drains phone battery, especially on older models. And that in itself is actually a health and safety hazard. You're kind of undoing the good work of this app.
Yeah.
If your
making sure having the location,
exactly, right?
Being contactable.
Exactly. Yeah. So if your phone is, if it's draining the phone's battery, it's actually a hindrance to health and safety. So I think there's major things there that trialing it out is why it's the best process, and that's why the trade union is involved. We make sure, if it's good enough for the members, it actually works. Cool. Yeah. If it's not working and you're actually undoing the whole reason you're getting this app, then I think we need to look at it. But yes, the sign-in, sign-off process isn't great. Also, it malfunctions occasionally, so members will sign on. It'll send a false alert to their managers. Their managers, are you okay? Oh yeah, sorry, I thought I signed on, but it didn't actually work. Or if they hard stop it, so obviously whenever you're going through your apps and you're getting rid of them to enhance your battery, if you hard stop it, it signs you out. So then you have to do it again, right? So yeah, it's unnecessary burdens. Exactly, it's unnecessary burdens like that. You know what I mean? Like we have to weigh this up. So I think gathering as much feedback, especially those who are using it. I know that we liaise with the company.
Yeah, as much as regular meetings set up.
Regular meetings, yes. Yeah, liaise with them as much as we can to get as much feedback as we can. And we are looking for the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything else. And it's in those conversations where we'll kind of find a middle ground. But the app, I mean, with all AI, it has to be worker led. They've got to have the autonomy over it. So it's just working out those little parts where it might not be as great, but the overall kind of reason why it's there is certainly one that we have to consider. Yeah,
and I think that is so important. I think we need to make sure that we are engaging with the company, we are providing that real life feedback, that we have had that about the battery life, the sign on, sign off. And I think another feedback that we've had is around where there's no mobile signal or there's a lack of mobile signal.
You can't just have like a backup SIM or a backup phone to do this here. This app should do as it says. And if it doesn't, then again, that should negate like where, like,
yeah, it's also about,
you know what I mean?
I think, because even during the trial, what we discussed as well was that this will bring to life where some of those hot spots are.
Yes.
And then to say, right, how do we come up with a solution, right? What other alternatives can we have? Because sometimes it's those areas that don't have the mobile signal where you're actually most vulnerable.
Exactly.
So because you don't have access to those things. So how does that actually come to life? How can you use the likes of the app when you've got no mobile signal?
Or having a backup SIM or an old
understanding
phone.
Then,
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is where, again, we need that feedback. We need to understand. We need to understand, like, so what has been the issues? What has been the problems? I think that's right across this whole app, isn't it? Because we need to know, because if Openreach come to us and say they want to roll this out further, they want to expand the trial, for example, or even they want to say, right, this is what we're going to bring in now. We need to know what works, what doesn't work.
Exactly.
And then, but what can we improve on? I think that's what we need to know, whether can we agree to this app being brought in? Can we get those measures in place that we've got for the trial so far around the data, the location? I think that's just so vitally important, but we need to know your feedback on it.
I agree.
Because the trade union movement have always led the way in health and safety. It has been a massive thing from the trade union movement from years and years. But this is where, is this actually, and does this provide the extra layer of the health and safety for our members?
Absolutely. I could not agree with you more. It's a member-led initiative. It always should be health and safety. The business would have kids up polls if it weren't for trade unions, and that's just a fact. That's just a fact. So I think we need to make sure that it works for the members. That that location part is so important, because that's the whole essence of why it's there. That's its whole purpose is for lone working. And if you're out somewhere in the middle of nowhere and the app isn't able to do location and your phone battery's gone down because you've been running the app, there's just different things that I think need to be taken into consideration before it's ever implemented. But it's member feedback that will drive that.
Yeah, and I think that's where we just need to be careful, don't we, on the location stuff, because of past history. We know what's happened even in the past with some of the ILM data and stuff.
Absolutely.
And some of the managers abusing that data.
Absolutely.
And we need to make sure we get the safeguards in place that if something like this, like how do the managers access it? When do they have access to it?
Absolutely.
And do we follow like the processes, some of the processes we've got in place now for the duty of care, rather than it going straight to a manager in the first instance?
Absolutely. I genuinely couldn't agree more. That is the whole purpose of this. I think, like, yes, fair enough, let your manager, like, you know, if something bad happens to you, like, you do let your manager know, right?
Yeah.
Like, that makes sense. You let your trade union know, but you let your manager know, especially whenever you're a lone engineer. But them having access to, like, your location data, things that can be abused in the past, have been abused in the past, still are being abused right now as we speak. That's exactly what our members will be, and you know, that's exactly what they'll deem important to them, you know, is those kind of things. Yeah.
So I think I just want to kind of end it here kind of and just say that thank you very much, and we appreciate all the feedback that we've had so far. It's been so important. It's been really vital. It's helped us and assist us in our negotiations with Openreach, and especially for going forward, that any other feedback and stuff that you have, please get in contact with your local CW rep, with your branch, because they then feed that back to ourselves, especially when we're going through those negotiations with the company.
Absolutely. And I think the concerns that you have are exactly the same concerns that we have, that we'll champion on your behalf. So don't hold back, speak to your branch, speak to your reps, and get in touch as soon as possible.